Welcome to Sisters-in-Law. As you can see, I'm here by myself today. Taquaze is off and traveling in Florida. She has the pleasure of taking her only child to college. Leslie Sekou just happened to get into Embry-Riddle. She is going to study aeronautical engineering. She's in an early admit program for the summer, and she'll start the majority of her classes in September. But on this day, or during this time, just after high school graduation, Taquaze and her daughter have traveled to Florida for the purpose of her going to school. And you know what? It's her only daughter, so Judge T is going through the empty nest syndrome. Well, I'm here. You know what? I'm going to share something with you. This is the second time I've done this video. I got to do a do-over, but you know what? The Democrats don't get to do a do-over in that last election they just lost. In fact, I think they're 0 for 4 when it comes to special elections in this most recent time, and they're hurting and they're smarting. And what do people do when they're hurting and they're smarting and they're angry? You start pointing fingers. And right now they're pointing fingers at Nancy Pelosi. They're trying to say that her leadership is what lost that election. They're trying to suggest that her leadership through her messaging is which trickles down to the rest of the party, is what has lost that election. Well, you know what? Let me say this. Maybe, just maybe, it has something to do with Nancy Pelosi. And maybe, just maybe, it has something to do with their messaging. But you know, the Democrats have lost, they lost the Congress back in 2010, and they haven't regained it since 2010. And here we are in 2013, 2017, excuse me. I don't know what I'm thinking about 13 for, but 2017, and they still haven't made any substantial ground when it comes to picking up seats in the House or the Senate. So they seem to be in the same place. I don't exactly know what that speaks of. It could be messaging, or it could be something else, or it could be just generally complicated in terms of all the interlayerings. But you know what? Let's look at something else when it comes to the Republicans. All right, so the Republicans won in Georgia. They won in Georgia, handily beat Ossoff. I believe the spread was 6 points. I believe that she won by 52% in that particular district in Georgia. Obviously, he's at 48%. Some people look at it a different way. Some Democrats look at it, well, he did pretty good considering this particular fact. The district in which Ossoff was running is a Republican stronghold. Therefore, the mere fact that he only lost by 6 points is something that they should be proud of. Then they, meaning the Democrats, should be proud of. And then other people are just kind of lumping it in and say, hey, look, you just lost another one. You lost that one, you lost, I think most recently it was a congressional race in Montana, where the candidate that was run on the Democratic front didn't win. Now, maybe this is a topic for another show. We're dealing with Republicans and Democrats. I guess if we had a viable third party, we wouldn't be splitting the spoils over two particular parties, but maybe over a third party. But again, I mean viable. Not just the Green Party, which collects minuscule votes every time and then, but a viable third party, somebody who could reckon with both the Democrats and the Republicans. Well, that's fantasy land, but this is where we are now. We've got a strong Republican Party, and I don't know if you want to term it strong, but you've got a Democratic Party. And those are the two factions that war against each other at this particular point. So let's talk about those Republicans. Those Republicans seem to have, not only do they have a majority in both the House and Senate, clearly the 45th, I guess he's a Republican. Well, he ran as a Republican. He's in the White House. So they have the White House and they control Congress by a majority, a relatively large majority. But let's go down even to, let's take this a little more locally. The Republicans also control most of the state houses. You know, we have 50 states. So, I don't know, one way you could look at it, you could look at the membership in the Republicans Governors Association, and you see there are a whole lot of members there. And you look at the membership in the Democratic Governors Association, and there are not so many members there. You know, the Republican Governors Association, when they meet, they can probably take up a nice-sized ballroom in a nice hotel. When the Democratic Governors Association meet, you know, they can just go to a restaurant and probably fly in and fly out. Why take up a big conference room or a ballroom any place? But let's really look at the numbers. The Republicans hold about, I think it's like 33 governorships within the United States. You know, there are 50 states and they hold 33 of them. The Democrats, they've got 17 governorships, and one of those governors is from Samoa. That's not a state. So, pretty sparse. More importantly, or just as important, of those 33 governorships that the Republicans hold, they also control the state. The state legislature is primarily Republican. What am I really driving at? Am I trying to say that the Republican Party is some stronghold within the United States? Not so much. What I'd like to talk to you about is what is called gerrymandering. And gerrymandering to the point where it has an undue influence on elections. You know, it was some time ago when the 45th was trying to say that the election was rigged. Well, let me suggest to you that the election is actually, the elections, the national elections, the local elections, the congressional elections, they're rigged too. They're rigged because of gerrymandering. They're rigged because gerrymandering, which means redrawing a district so it favors one particular party over another. You know, in this particular case, we've got the Democrats and Republicans. Gerrymandering means that I'm suggesting to you that those districts, those congressional districts, and you know, I'm sure to a large extent, those state districts are drawn in such a way that it favors Republican candidates. What am I saying? This is what I'm saying. I'm saying that, well, let's back up. Let's back up to 2010. Or let's just back up in general and just say, hey, look, why do we even have districts and how do they get drawn? Every time there's a census, a national census, which affects all states, the legislature in those particular states get an opportunity to assess their representation in Congress, and they get an opportunity, based on that assessment, they get an opportunity to redraw the congressional districts. Now, this isn't just me speaking. There have been statistics, there have been think tanks, there have been studies that have shown that the gerrymandering has gone on, at least since 2010 and probably before, favors Republicans. Why is all this important? Am I a Democrat? Am I a Republican? I'm an independent. All I know is that when a particular party controls everything, that's not good. I think there needs to be some balance there. I think maybe if there was some balance, we wouldn't have the gridlock that's going on in Washington right now. You know, we speak of the gridlock that took place during the Obama administration, where the Republicans were known essentially as the party of no. Well, now we've got a Republican stronghold. We've got the 45th, who is, he's the president. We've got a Republican Congress, and it doesn't seem to be a whole lot going. Now, there's some other issues, you know, something like Russia, the Russia investigation, and to the extent that that may have had some influence on the election. But I think that one of the reasons that the Democrats are having a tough time winning anything, yeah, okay, it may have something to do with their messaging. It may have something to do with their inability to connect with the average Joe. But I think it all also has a lot to do with gerrymandering. You know, let's go back to 1812. Let's, in the beginning, you know where gerrymandering came from? Or where the phrase itself was coined? Back in 1812 in Massachusetts, Governor Elbridge Gerry decided to redraw the districts in the state of Massachusetts to favor his party. And oddly, you know what that party was back in 1812? It was called the Democratic Republican Party. Somewhere along the line, the Democratic and the Republican split, or maybe it didn't mean anything like we know today. But he, that particular governor, redrew the district to the point that it was contorted so much that it looked like a salamander. And somewhere between Jerry and Sala and Mander, we got gerrymandering. That's the history. So let's fast forward to 2010. And now we have a majority, at least in 2010, you know, coincidentally, that's when the Republicans gained control of Congress, you know, 2 years into the Obama administration. Now, there may be a lot of other reasons why that may have happened, but I would suggest to you gerrymandering, or the redrawing of districts to favor one party over the other, and in this particular case, Republicans, has a lot to do with why the Democratic Party can't seem to pick up any seats, any significant number of seats in both the Senate and the House. Now, let's hope, and I say this not because I'm a Republican or not because I'm a Democrat. I really am an independent. I am an independent. But I'm hoping that the Democrats can pick up some seats in 2018. And I'm hoping that the callous nature of the Republican agenda, which seems to favor the rich and despise the poor, will have some effect on the overall voters when those quote-unquote Trump supporters, some of those Trump supporters, find out that, you know, Obamacare was actually the ACA, and they realize that now that they're going to slash it, cut Medicaid, they're going to lose some of their benefits, if indeed they're able to ram the latest bill that came out last week. Get some consensus on it. They're going to see, hopefully, if they're reading, if they choose to look at other media outlets other than some of your more conservative media outlets, if they choose to read some other papers other than some of your more conservative papers, if they choose to understand what's really happening and the way these particular, the quote-unquote Republican agenda does not assist them, maybe, just maybe, there'll be some change in the House. But let's talk about gerrymandering. And why do I think this is so important? In fact, the Supreme Court of the United States thinks it's important. There's a case out of Wisconsin, and it has to do with an undue partisan redrawing of the districts in the state of Wisconsin. And in the state of Wisconsin, hey, remember these two phrases: cracking and packing. I'm not making this up. It's in the court papers. Cracking and packing. In the state of Wisconsin, some citizens, which just happen to be Democrats, and I suspect that some Democratic Party force is behind them, sued a lot of the election commissions, or at least all of the election commissions, or whoever is in charge of the elections in the state of Wisconsin, because Their claim is that the manner in which the state legislature redrew the districts in 2010 unduly favored Republicans as opposed to Democrats. Now, this isn't necessarily a case of first impression for the United States Supreme Court. They've decided to hear this case that came out of Wisconsin, out of the federal district court in Wisconsin, because it's not necessarily a novel question, but they get, for the first time, they, meaning the United States Supreme Court, is going to make a decision on whether or not undue political influence in this particular case is a recognized, I don't know if you want to call it a recognized class, or can be considered discriminatory. In 2004, the U.S. Supreme Court also took up this issue, and they said, you know what, it is unlawful to unduly weight congressional districts in favor of one political party. But you know, back in 2004, they couldn't figure out how to come up with an analysis that was, in their mind, fair and proper. Well, let's fast forward. Now we are here in 2017. I got the year right this time. In 2017, and the United States Supreme Court is going to take up that issue once again. Now, remember I told you to remember the terms cracking and packing? Again, this is the language or the lingo that was utilized in the court papers in Wisconsin. Now, let me tell you what cracking is. Let's just say that in the state of Wisconsin, prior to the redistricting, there was a Democratic candidate who happened to have been in office who had a wide support within a particular district. And then post-2010, the legislature, which just happened to be Republican controlled, decided to take that candidate's support and disperse it amongst the state. In other words, dilute that support. So they cracked that particular Democrat, and in general, we could say a situation where there are Democratic voters, where a Democratic candidate could be successful. They cracked the support in that particular district by redrawing the district and spreading those particular voters all over the state, or at least dispersing them somewhat. And what about packing? Well, packing is where you redraw districts to the extent that it favors one particular candidate in and of one particular party in and of itself, but unduly favors one particular party. So, just like back in 1812, where they had these contorted, if you will, redistricting maps, that you looked at the map back in 1812, literally the district that favored the Democratic Republican Party looked like a salamander. Now, I'm not sure what the district looks like in Wisconsin, but it's contorted. And it's contorted in such a way that it not only looks strange, so, you know, it's got little squiggly lines all over the state, but it unduly favors, at least according to the feds, the federal district court in Wisconsin, the Republican Party. Now, why am I talking about this? Because this repeats itself, in my opinion, over those 30-some-odd states where there are Republican governors as well as state houses that are controlled by Republicans. So in that, what happens? They redraw these districts to favor them. So what I'm saying is the Democrats, they have an uphill battle each time. Supreme Court's going to weigh in on this. It's not going to be until the fall. Well, at least they're going to hear the case in the fall. The question is, how will they decide it? They couldn't decide it in 2004. I wonder what they'll come up with in 2017. We'll probably hear something in, I don't know, spring of 2018. The makeup of the Supreme Court is going to be very important as how they might decide. But they have decided, and if they follow precedent in 2004, that undue favor of one party over the other is unlawful, unconstitutional, they might just do that this time. Well, that's my show on what's going on with sisters-in-law and what's going on within our nation. Now, maybe on another show we'll talk about local politics. Not just in New Jersey, you know, we're kind of based out of New Jersey. We are indeed. Because it's my particular opinion that politics is local and that you need to have a strong foot and a stronghold locally so it trickles up. But this is important too. This is my reasoning, at least part of the reason why the Democrats are having such a tough time. Okay, yeah, they don't really have a message that resonates with everybody. But they're crippled. The election is rigged. Not in favor of Democrats. National elections and congressional elections are rigged in favor of Republicans. You know, that's sisters-in-law. If you look around, I'm in my kitchen here. Place where I could get the best light of all the places in my house. I'll see you next week. Next week, we'll have Deposit back. And we'll go back to our bickering about whatever's happening during the week, and we know we're in store for a lot. Catch us on Facebook, catch us on Instagram, Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube page. I know a lot of you are watching, but we'd really like you to hit that little button in the corner that says subscribe so you get notified about our videos. Take care and see you next week.